And welcome back, everybody, to the Podcaster Nation. That's right. I said welcome back because I know you were just listening to our stuff and you loved it so much you wanted to come back for more. Not only do we have more for you, we have some of the original more for you. Okay. This gentleman on here today with me, may be the first podcaster ever. I'm not real sure how
No, not
far
quite.
back
Not
his
quite.
history goes, but you're going to absolutely love this story. You're going to love hearing about him and his podcast. This is the podcast that is for podcasters. It's about podcasters and it's done by podcasters. Like we already said, my guest is a podcaster supreme. So can't wait to hear his story. Folks, this is a place where the rising tide raises all ships. So let's get to it. All right, let's get our ships on the sea and start sailing. Please welcome to the show, Horses in the Morning podcast, the longest running daily podcast in the world, from what I can tell and what I'm hearing. Founder of the Horse Radio Network, which I can't wait to hear more about. Yeah, cancer survivor, and it sounds like all around OG of the business. So please welcome Glenn Hebert. Glenn, how you doing?
Good. Thanks, Rory. Appreciate you having me on today. It's fun. It's always
Uh,
fun talking about podcasting.
that's great. I love when people come on here and have fun. That's sort of the whole thing. Isn't it funny how so quickly we all forget that podcasting is supposed to be fun?
Yeah. Well, and the longer you do it, the more it tries to become. I've done probably over 5 to 6,000 episodes total now. But yet, I the reason that we can go that long, and we that you all be going that long, hopefully, is because we truly enjoy this, the on the mic part.
Yeah,
This is the fun part. This is the part where we get to sit and hang out with our guests and talk. And we're all curious people, or we wouldn't be doing this job, right? And you especially. I mean, you have like 70 some episodes now, but every one is totally different. Your guests are not the same in any way, shape, or form. You have to be a truly curious people and really love talking to people to do that. And that's what makes a good host,
thank
right?
you.
And I've had over 5,000 episodes. We've interviewed over 7,000 people
Wow.
on the shows I've hosted. So, you have to be really curious and you have to just want to learn about everything, or else it's not fun, right? And but that's what makes it fun, is this right here.
For sure.
Everything else, I always say, everything else off the mic is kind of a job. It's work, right? It's booking the guest and dealing with sponsors and just all of that stuff is work. This is the fun part.
Absolutely, 100%. I could not agree with you more. I love that. And thank you very much for, I mean, being told I'm a good host is, from someone like you, that means a lot.
I wouldn't be on if you weren't.
I
So
appreciate it.
I do listen to episodes. I'm always shocked at guests. You ask them to come on the show, and our show's been around. Worse in the Morning been around daily for 15 years. We're approaching 4,000 episodes. I'm always shocked that we ask a guest to come on and they don't listen to the show ahead of time. It just blows me away. Like every show I go on, I listen to at least an episode or two to know the
Absolutely.
flavor. I just don't get it. I don't get that. Uh, I
I don't either.
would. I mean, you don't know what you're walking into.
That's great advice, though, for especially younger podcasters who have never been told that. They really think it's just get on, have a conversation, and kind of wing it.
You have to know their style and kind of know what you look for.
Yeah.
We're having a conversation already that's kind of off your script, but I know that's your style. It's very, drinking coffee, having conversation, which I think is more interesting anyway.
Thanks.
But and the fact that you didn't send me questions ahead of time, I really liked, because we don't do that with our guests.
Yep.
We have a topic we know we're going to talk about, but I always want to have that conversation with the guest, and I'm always looking for the golden nugget with the guest. It's the thing you didn't plan on that they throw out there, that if you're a good host, you're going to follow that. If you spend the next 15 minutes talking about that golden nugget, because if they throw that out there, that bizarre statement that you just go, oh my God, I never thought I'd hear that today, and you bypass that because you got another question to get to, your listener's sitting there going, why the hell didn't you ask him about that? And always follow that gold nugget, because that's where the gold is. It's there. It's not what
Yeah.
you planned. It's what they throw at you that was totally not planned. Uh,
Love that. Love that. I did a 3 episode series in the Podcaster Nation, our free group that we have. And I mentioned those things right in there, just like that. You don't be so worried about getting to your next question that you don't hear what they just said to you.
because that's the gold.
That is,
Yeah.
they're bringing up what they want to talk about.
Yep.
Amazing. I love hearing that, man. All right, beautiful. Beautiful. All right. Let me get this back on the rails just for a minute
Okay.
because everybody's like, well, these guys really are just having a conversation, trading coffee. So
Warning, it's going to be that way for the next hour. So
there you go. All
buckle up.
right. Just deal with it, folks. This is how it
Yeah.
goes, you know? But no, seriously, the number one, uh, the longest running daily
It's one of
podcast.
the longest running. We think it's in the top five. It's kind of hard to quantify that in podcasting, right? We think it's one of, there are a couple podcasts that I think are over 4,000 episodes. John Lee Dumas is at 40 some hundred. He's, but he does more than, daily. He puts out several a week or several a day sometimes. So we think it's one of the most consistent. It's up there for sure. There's not too many people. And one of the things that makes it unique too is it's the same co-host. I've had the same co-host for the entire run. I've just got lucky. She was top 40 radio in Atlanta. She was part of the morning show in Atlanta. The girl. There's always two guys and a girl on a morning top 40 radio show,
Yeah.
and she was the girl. So she was just a hell of a storyteller. And I got lucky. She's a horse person and wanted to talk about horses, and here we are, 15 years later, talking about horses every day. So,
No, it's funny hearing you say that because my little sister is a horse trainer in Indianapolis,
oh
right
wow,
outside of
okay,
Indianapolis. And so she was on the quarter horse circuit in Michigan and Indiana for just forever. And so I hear like your quarter horse show and I hear them
yep.
talking about this up in Michigan. And I'm like, oh my God, I know these places, because I went to watch her ride. And so I know that horse people are, I mean, seriously, and I mean this in a complimentary way, are a different breed
Oh,
because, I
they're
mean,
they're completely different, and they're
oh, yeah,
addicted. I mean, they're focused on one thing, and that's horses, and that's it. I mean,
right.
if I married into this, so as a budding boyfriend of a horse girl who was addicted, you have to learn your lessons. Like never say it's me or the horse because you're gone,
You're
you're
gone.
out. Yeah, that's it. I mean, you learn to put up with it or you're out. But that is true, and I think that's one of the things that contributed to the success of Horse Radio Network is we had an addicted audience that's all they think about. So we were the only ones doing this in the podcast world and the horse world for about 10 years. It was Horse Radio Network shows, and especially Horses in the Morning, and so we that also allowed us to get sponsors much quicker because
Ah,
I knew those people too. I'd been in the retail side of the horse world. I consulted with retail companies in the horse world. I knew a lot of people starting off. So I was able to go to them and say, hey, look, we have a small audience, but it's addicted, right? They're addicted to what you're selling. And so I was able to get sponsors early on because we have such a niche focused audience. That's tough when you do a general show.
yeah, it
Uh,
is.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
tough. So we were lucky, not lucky that way. I kind of planned it that way. I knew that was going to be the case because I had been in the horse world and worked in the horse world for a period of time. And I'd started. We were the second ones to have an online tack shop or horse selling business. We were the second ones online to do it before you could even pay online. They either had to pay PayPal or send me a check.
Oh,
That's how
wow.
early it was. And we were the first ones to sell horse stuff on eBay. So we were I knew the world. So when I started the podcast, I wanted to get back into entertainment, and that's how that started. I needed to do something fun and entertaining again. So that's how it all started. But I knew, and I had it kind of planned that we were going to have an in that other podcasts didn't have that were more broad in general.
Yeah, for sure. The clientele is so incredibly loyal to the entire subject matter. So that's fascinating too. I always ask podcasters, when they come on here, if they've gotten into monetization yet and what their experience has been and so on. You were able to hit it right off because you had the built-in audience. And you said
Well,
you
and I
knew
had the
that.
built-in connections.
Okay.
When I speak at conferences, one of the slides I always put up is it's not who you know, it's who knows you.
Hmm.
That
That
saying's
makes
always been
sense.
backwards. I don't care who you know, it's who knows you. And the thing is, when I went into podcasting, the people in the manufacturing and retail world kind of knew who I was. So that helped when I contacted them about sponsoring a show, right? And remember, podcasting back then, you couldn't. There were no iPhones, there were no smartphones. They had to They listened on their computer, or they downloaded it to their computer and then put it on their iPod. You had to be damn well committed to listening to a show back then. So it was a whole different ball game back then. We were teaching people how to listen to podcasts in addition to trying to teach sponsors what a podcast was. So we had all of that to deal with in the early days. And it wasn't probably till Serial came out that till the podcast Serial came out
Hmm.
that started to change. And then COVID really did change the world of podcasting.
Sure. Yeah, of course. You guys were already well established by the time COVID hit.
Yeah,
So,
but it helped our numbers considerably because, you know, I still go to conferences and shows. We were just at a show where we meet a lot of listeners and stuff. And, but yet we have a booth and people still combine don't know what a podcast is. So, I mean, there's still a lot of people out there, especially in the horse world, are a little, you know, they're a little behind technologically, or they always have been a little bit. They're catching up now. But we always had that teaching thing where we had to teach people that, you know, I still get what station is it on. I still get that.
really,
Yep.
wow. Even with radio being as splintered as it is and stuff like
Yep.
that, they just don't go, wow, that's
Well,
interesting.
well, and you have to remember too that a lot of our listeners are very rural, have crappy internet. You know, some of
There you
our
go.
listeners are still looking at down, or you know, they only have so much bandwidth to download each month, so they have to decide which podcasts they're going to download because they run out of bandwidth because they have rural, very rural internet connections.
Yeah.
Starlink is changing that now too, so you know that's changing a little bit because of Starlink. But we've always had multiple battles because of the nature of our listening audience, are very rural.
Right.
You know.
One thing I love just listening to you though here as we're sitting here just, talking back and forth, and I hope other podcasters are hearing, is your potential audience and your current audience. You know them. Like you know where they live and what their issues are. So many people just sort of like record and throw it out into the stratosphere and go, if I build it, they will come. But I mean, you really research this and you know exactly who you're talking to.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that podcasters make a mistake of is that they don't have a place for their listeners to get together and chat about your shows. So what I advise podcasters to do is, in our case, our listeners are on Facebook. You know, yours might be on Instagram, yours might be on TikTok. I don't know where your particular listeners are. Ours are on Facebook. It tends to be where horse people are because they like to look at pictures of horses.
That
I
makes
mean,
sense.
it's partly true, right? I'm thinking, is it your sister? You said,
Yeah, my little
yeah.
sister.
Think of your sister. She's on Facebook. I guarantee you, and she looks at pictures of horses all day. It's what we do.
Yeah.
So I advise you start a private group. This is the key. I believe in a private group for your show from the very beginning. It's going to be dead for a year until it starts to build. But when it does, you're going to have 10 people that join that because they want to talk about the episodes. That, you know, and there are some perfect examples. I mean, we have a very active private group we only allow Patreon supporters in that. So it's a paid group,
Hmm.
actually. We
Wow.
kind of kept the riffraff out that way. And they become a family. They'll talk about anything. But we gave them a place to talk about the episodes. And almost every episode we do on Horses in the Morning, they're discussing something. And it's not the something you thought they would be discussing. You know, it's always the topic you threw out there again, it's not the one you planned. And that's the
Right.
one they pick up on, and they'll have a whole conversation. All 600 of them will be in there talking about it. So, you know, you give them a place to chat. You know, what was that like? Scott Johnson does a show called What Was That Like? And he started that maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And I told him right at the beginning, and I've been friends with him for years. I said, you have to give your people, especially because he does a show where people have gone through crazy things like the parachute didn't open and they survived. And that's what his
Hmm.
episodes are about, that kind of thing. Or my sister got murdered or whatever. You need a place for your listeners because they're going to want to talk about those episodes. And now he has thousands of people in there that are so active, but it's a private group, so he can control it. And that's one of the most active groups I've seen, talking about specific every episode he does, people talk about, because they're also out there that you have to talk to somebody about it. But if you don't have that place for them to meet and talk about, you're not building a community.
Right. Right. I love that advice. We did that with one of the first things we did with the Podcaster Nation. And I,
You
I
did it.
learned it on my other podcast, but
Yep.
it's one of the first things we did was putting that together. And you're so right, because it brings people together with a common thread
And
of
you're going to
something.
get depressed. They'll get depressed, won't they? Because there won't be activity in there. You'll be the activity for a while,
Oh yeah.
but you have to give it time, and it'll build. And you're constantly promoting it too. That's the other thing. You need to promote it. They're not going to find out about it unless you promote it. So
Right.
I don't know what you found talking to people, but a lot of the podcasters I meet at Podfest and podcast movement and that kind of thing, they're afraid to promote their own stuff on their show because they're going to come across as advertising.
Yeah.
Well, it's your freaking show. You're supposed to be advertising. This is what you're not doing it. you're doing it to listen to yourself talk. That's part of the reason we all do it. But you're also doing it if the only thing you're promoting is your place for your listeners to get together, they're not going to hate you for that. That's
Right.
do it.
I love that. I hear that a lot. Yes. I mean, I don't want to be too salesy,
Oh,
and
you can be salesy without it being infomercial.
yeah, and the whole world is sales.
Yeah,
Really,
we're all
So if they're
selling
listening to
something.
if they're listening to your show, then they at least like you or they wouldn't be listening to the
you
show.
you had to sell them on listening to your show in the first place, so you're being salesy.
Absolutely. 100%. All right, so you get into this. You're dating the horse girl. You're in the horse
Yes.
world. You get into doing the podcast because it's a business opportunity or because you're trying to network. What was sort of the cause
I'd been
for
consulting with a number of
podcast?
businesses by that point,
Uh-huh.
and my one contract was up, and I had another contract starting that was going to be 2 years, and it was one that I didn't need to spend on full time. And I had owned an acting company for 10 years. We did kind of a Benny Hill version of Medieval Feast.
Oh wow.
So I played a king on stage, and we did corporate events. We did shows of all kinds. We did 450 shows over 10 years. So I liked performing. I liked acting. I liked improv. That was totally an improv show. And I liked improv, and I didn't want to get back on the road doing that. It's hard work for a lot of money. But this podcasting thing was coming up, and their Twit, Leo Laporte was doing a podcast, and that was the one I listened to. And I said, well, I'm just going to start one of those. And we don't know how. Nothing that we have today to start a podcast. There was barely any hosts to even start a podcast.
Right.
So I thought, well, I'm going to experiment with this. In 2006, I started a show, which went for a while. And then in 2008, when my next contract was starting for consulting, I said, well, I'm going to have some time. Let's just play around with this, give it time to build. So we started one show, but I knew I wanted a network of shows. So I started the network at the same time I started the first show, even though for the first year and a half, there was only one show on the network, but it was advertised as a network. The bumper was at the beginning. So it was always going to be more than one show. And I knew I had to set that stage for the listeners that in their mind, this was part of a network. And eventually, there was going to be more stuff. And then we started second show, third show, and it built from there. Now we have over 30. But it was built slowly in the beginning. We learned how to edit, we learned how to do all that stuff, we learned how to advertise because that was tough. That was in the beginning days of Twitter and Facebook and all of that. We were just starting all of that, so we were learning all of this at the same time.
Yeah.
RSS feeds, RSS feeds were a lot manual back then. So, we were doing that kind of manually back then. It was learning it the hard way and also doing everything else, trying to build it. I knew I needed a sponsor. If I was going to be out of my consulting contract in 2 years, I needed something to pay some bills at the end of the 2 years. And that's so we got our first sponsor when we had 12 listeners to the first show. And that was only because I sold the dream. I'd been in sales for a long time, and I knew that people think you're selling a product. You're not, you're selling yourself. That is one thing that's not changed in 40 years in the time I've been doing sales. Is I don't care whether I was in the financial sales world for a long time. I don't care if I'm selling stocks or I'm selling whatever I'm selling, life insurance, whatever it was, you're selling yourself. So when you go in, this is a mistake other podcasters make. They think they're selling their show. And the kind of sales I do, it's not based on CPMs, it's flat rate because we would never have enough CPM. I kind of invented that, by the way, years ago and talked about it first at PodFest. And people said to me, you're never going to do that. It's not how it's done. And I said, well, it's how it's done here because I may have 2,000 listeners that are worth more than 30,000 listeners, general listeners, because my 2,000 are going to buy stuff that I say to buy stuff. So I had to go in and say, hey, look, that 2,000 listeners is worth $300 an ad. Even though, at the beginning, it wasn't that much. It was maybe $50 an ad. Now
Right.
it's $400 an ad for those listeners. But it's not based on CPM. It wasn't based per cost per thousand. It was based on what I thought it was worth. And I had to go in and sell it, though. They're buying me. Just like your listeners are buying you. They come for the content. They stay for the host. That's why your listeners are there. They're not coming back unless they like you. So
Right.
they're there for you. Your listeners, Rory, aren't here because they like me. They're here because they like you and they trust you to bring good content. It's the same with sponsors. They're buying it because they like you. So they're buying you. So those first sponsors we had no numbers. They were buying the dream that it was going to be something someday, and they were buying into me. By the way, that first sponsor is still spending tens of thousands of dollars with us every year, sponsoring 4 different shows 18 years later. Never missed a month.
Nice. I love that we're having a sales conversation right now. This is
Well,
just
I'm sorry, I
fantastic
didn't
for me.
mean to go there
I
either.
love it. I'm,
But
I'm so charged listening to this. I'm like, I hope all the people listening to this are hearing every word you're saying. I've been preaching so much of this, and it's to have somebody like you backing up all these things I've said is awesome credibility for
well,
the things I've been
it's
telling them.
just true. It's a fact. It's the way it is, and we tend to get in our own heads, especially as podcasters, because podcasters as a whole tend to overthink everything. It's our nature because we're kind of type A. A lot of us are type A, and
Sure.
we like to talk, so we overthink everything. And when you boil it down, it's not as complicated as we think it is. It's and I think keeping it simple over the years and having systems for everything I do, because we knew we had to have systems in place. I just did a show on SOPs yesterday and standard operating procedures.
Yeah.
And I credit a lot of success of Horse Radio Network to SOPs, because without those SOPs, we couldn't produce 80 to 100 episodes a month. We couldn't
Nice.
do it. So,
Nice. I got to ask you that because there's a lot of, and we talked about this a little bit beforehand, but there's a lot of podcasters out there who are, just independent folks. They
yep.
don't have the first idea what a network even is, let alone what the positives or negatives or anything might be. Could you describe kind of like what your network is, how it works, why it's good to be part of one, or not to be part of some of the other ones that are out there, and just give everybody an idea of what it is you and I are sitting here going back and forth about.
Well, like in any other thing in podcasting, there's 50 versions of networks.
Right.
There's no rhyme or reason. We made all this up. We invented all this. So
I
we
love it.
and we all invented it differently. So it's true. I belong to an association of small network podcast networks, and we all do it different. So a network is just more than one show under an umbrella. That's it. So Horse Radio Network, when I had 2 shows, was a network. When I had one show, it was a network because I called it a network. Again, there were no rules, so I made up the rules. So it's just a conglomeration of shows under a banner, under a brand. And, obviously a lot of those brands have a niche, like mine is specifically horses. So any
Sure.
of the shows under this are have to involve horses in some way, shape, or form. There are broader networks. There's one very popular network out there that's a network of just women podcasters. That's the catch to hers, is it's women podcasters. Oh, so it's called. And she has thousands of podcasts under there. The advantage to a network in most cases is you're under umbrella, you get some kind of support. You get cross promotions in a lot of cases, like we cross promote our shows. You get in some cases like ours, you can get editing support. You get all of the different kinds of back end support.
Hmm.
In our case, we pay for the hosting. So all of the shows on ours, we provide the hosting. It's all under, we use Captivate. It's very good for networks. And so there's different levels of networks. They all work differently, but whether you should be on a network depends what they're offering you. What are you getting out of being on the network? You have to ask that question. So if you have a network approach you, what am I getting out of it? If it's just, well, I'm going to put you on the network and we're going to hope that it increases your numbers, what are they doing to promote your show? Are they doing anything to help you? A lot of times, if it's a niche network, let's say it's hiking, for instance, and there is a hiking network out there. I'm friends with him, and all of his shows benefit again from the cross promotions, and also you can benefit from, a lot of the larger networks. They get advertising, and you can participate in that advertising dollar. Is it as much as you sold it? Probably not, but it really helps those shows that have a tough time selling. They're broader niche that have a tough time selling to a specific company for their audience. So it allows them the opportunity to find a sponsor where they wouldn't normally. So check it out, do some research on it before you join a network, and how is it benefiting you? If it's not, then don't do it. If it's not
Interesting.
going to benefit you, why do it?
So if I'm a horse show and I'm talking to you about being on your network, what do I get being on your network, if you don't mind me asking? If that's
Well,
confidential, that's fine. I don't want you to
no, no, that's not
put out the
confidential.
secret sauce.
No,
You know.
no, that's not confidential. One, different things. If you're already doing your own advertise or your own editing and things like that, and the show's established and you're bringing it on the network, one, you get the cross promotion is a big thing. You can go on other shows we get hosts sharing shows all the time. The other thing we have is, we'll get to that later, but there's a sales team that sells the advertising. So that's one of the big advantages of being on our network
Hmm.
is that we have a sales team that sells advertising. So your chances of getting advertising are probably greater than if you're doing it on your own.
Wow. Okay. Good deal. So the ads are placed on your show then, like
Yep.
pre-recorded, or are they doing
Yep.
live
And
reads
then it's
or?
an ad split. Yep.
Oh, okay.
It's an ad split. Yeah, our studies show we do surveys every year of our listeners, and our surveys show that listeners like improv ad reads. That is by 90% is the advertising they prefer.
Yeah.
So when Jamie and I, who we host Horses in the Morning, we'll do 4 ads an hour. That's the most we'll put in an hour show. But a couple of those ads, they don't even know we're weaving them in. I mean, we're weaving them into the conversation, and then at the end we put the plug
Nice.
where to buy it. But that's the best ad, the most effective ad that we have found with our audience. And by the way, 90% of that audience and this has been the same in every survey we've done every year. 90% has bought something that we've recommended on Horses in the Morning in the last year.
Wow.
90% of the survey, and we get 400 or 500 people respond to that survey, and that's been true. That 90% figure is held true. When we ask the same question, how many have bought something they've read or they found in a magazine ad or an article? It's 25%.
Hmm.
That's the power of you being their friend as a host, because it's a friend recommending the product, and that's why those host read kind of improv ads work the best. That's why you see them on YouTube shows. They're very good at weaving ads. Some of these YouTubers are excellent at weaving ads into the conversation. You don't even know what's happening, but they're good at it because they're my friend. They listen to us 5 days a week. So I'm their friend, and I'm saying this supplement for your horse works, and we test all our supplement. We test all the products. We don't do a product unless it's tested.
Wow.
And I've turned them down if we
Interesting.
don't believe in them. Yeah.
I love hearing that. I mean, I have always sort of thought that, but it's great to have that backup of that. I mean, that
Oh,
response
you
figure is insane.
if I put a product out there that I say is great, and I know it's not, I know it's kind of,
Right.
and four of my listeners think it's, they're never going to buy anything I recommend again.
Right.
And we've been doing this 15 years. We need them to buy stuff. It just takes that long to ruin everything we've established for 15 years, for
Yeah.
4,000 episodes.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
you got to be careful. And there are times I wanted to take that money. Believe me, I
I
needed
imagine.
that money, and
Yeah.
I didn't take it.
Yeah. That's good long-term thinking, though. I mean, I love that. That's also
Well,
credibility.
it's
You can't get
credibility.
that back once you lose it.
No, you lose it, you're done.
So I
And
have
boy,
that
they
on
can
my other
talk.
show.
Boy, they
Yeah.
can talk now. When we first started, there was no way to people to communicate with each other except at the barn, right? But
Oh yeah.
now, you one thing and you're done.
Yeah. You'll be on social media about how
Yep,
horrible it was, and then it's
yep,
over. You can't
yep.
pull that back.
Nope, you
So
can't.
I do a live read for a coffee sponsor on my other show, and I improv it a little bit, but it's kind of the same thing. But it's still a live read, and it doesn't seem to get skipped that much. And I do a flat fee, so I kind of feel good that I'm a little ahead of the
No,
curve and doing some
you
of these
have
things you're
to. I
talking
mean,
about.
unless you're getting unless you're getting 20 to 100,000 downloads an episode consistently, you're not going to make any money on a CPM. You pay
Yeah,
the bills, probably. You'll pay the bills,
right.
but you're not going to retire your current job.
No,
So you have to get creative, and more podcasters are getting very good at the other stuff. They're selling services. They're selling, whatever the other thing is they're selling that, or they're. I have some friends that are completely supported by Patreon, and they're making a darn good living, like 15 to 20 grand a month,
wow, that's
completely
impressive.
Patreon.
No
Yeah,
kidding.
but they're more mainstream audiences, tech audiences, things like that,
Ah,
and they were established kind of before they got to podcasting, so they had an audience when they went into it.
nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little bit more difficult when you're sort of and not that anybody's a nobody, but in terms of
Oh,
being known,
I was nobody when I started.
right?
We
You're a
were
nobody.
nobodies. Yeah.
So, in the podcasting world, I was a nobody when I first
Yeah.
started. It was like, who is this guy?
Let's face it, we're both still kind of nobodies in the podcasting world when you take a look at the Joe Rogan scale of things, right? I mean,
100%.
yeah.
100%. Yeah, Joe Rogan hasn't called me yet. I'm not real
No,
sure
he hasn't
why.
called me either. I
That's
don't either.
man,
I don't
now
know.
that surprises me.
I keep waiting, and there's just no call.
I mean, he's been talking about ivermectin or whatever it's called for, how many years now?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Isn't that a
that's
horse
true.
thing?
That's true. It's true. That was a believe me when COVID came around because we use ivermectin all the time with the
I love it.
horses, and that was a topic of conversation that went viral in the horse world.
Yeah, I imagine. So I'm surprised he didn't have you on as an executive expert
I know.
consultant or
I
something,
know.
to talk
I'm
about it.
waiting, Joe. Come on.
That's right. I'll tag him in this episode. I'm sure he'll
Okay.
get it.
Yeah.
That's great. I love the idea then of what you did with the podcast network, and you said you have more than 30 shows.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I always knew I wanted to sell it at some point. That was the end goal, was to sell the network. And I knew that it would be more valuable than one show because I needed to sell it to somebody that had a sales team that could sell against 30 shows rather than one.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't start a new show until I had enough advertisers in the other shows. So, in other words, those shows were self supporting. Now I could start another one and bring new advertisers in, or
Nice.
old advertisers wanted another show. They wanted to add to their number of shows. So, that's when I'd start a new show, is when I could pay for it. Because I didn't have any loans. I didn't have any money. We were doing this from all our money. This was our money that did this. We didn't borrow any money at all over the years. So we had to constantly slowly build it over time. But I always knew I wanted to sell it. COVID came around. I got cancer. That was a wake up call. I had friends that had just died of cancer and gone to groin surgery and had complications, almost died a couple times from sepsis and other things.
Mm,
And it was all during COVID too. That was fun.
I'll bet.
Um, I was probably the only one that was in the hospital in a floor that I was completely alone. That probably has not happened since then. I was the only one. I'd done my surgery, was in for a couple days, and I was the only one. I would walk around. I didn't even have to wear my mask because I was the only one on the floor because they separated the COVID patients at that point.
Uh,
But yeah, so I was a wake up call, and I said, I need to. If I'm going to sell, I need to do it now. And I contacted all the media companies in the horse world, and I said, "Look, I'm going to sell the network. You need audio as part of your plan. You have the written. Some of them had video companies, and negotiated with all three, and ended up with the right one. I ended up selling to Equine Network and love them. It's been a great relationship. I've been on as a consultant for 3 years since then. And that, as you know, with principals that sell out their companies, they're usually gone in 6 months. But it's worked great, and I still host and run the network. And then in another couple of months, I'll just be hosting my shows. And then we hired somebody to run the network, and I'll just be doing this part, the fun part.
the fun part.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I mean,
yeah,
that's a great sort of retirement schedule almost, moving into that kind of phase of life. Congratulations on that.
yeah. It was fun. I mean, it was an experience, and dealing with it was. I can't say how much it was, but it wasn't a tiny number. The contract negotiations took probably 4 months.
Oh, wow.
And I thank God, if you're ever looking at selling a company, get a mergers and acquisitions attorney that specializes in mergers and acquisitions. Thank God I had one, because I'm good at contracts. Didn't understand half of this one. It was 100 pages. I didn't understand it. It was all they use all their own words that
Nice.
you won't understand. And he was great. He first thing he did was redline half. He crossed out half of it, took that
Wow.
initial proposal theirs, crossed out about half, and said, "We're going to send this back to them." I said, "Well, they're gone, right?" And then they came back and said, "We know you have a serious attorney now that's done this before." And that was respect. And then it
Oh,
went great. It
wow.
was just attorneys talking to each other from then on, and it was, they had respect. It was,
Nice.
yeah,
Nice. I mean, also talk about giving you validation on the decision to bring the attorney in.
yeah.
You
Oh
know,
no, it was worth it. Now that was a lot of money, and it was worth every penny.
my goodness. Well, that's great. That's great. Now, did you go into this really thinking you'd sell it someday, or was that
Yes.
something that you did?
No, that was the plan. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I
I
was
wasn't planning on
curious.
getting cancer and that kind of moving things along, but I knew I was going to at some point.
Okay.
And you
Um,
know what? Since I sold, it's been nice not paying the bills. It's been nice having a sales team because they already had a sales team. I went with a media company that has they have almost 200 employees,
Oh, wow.
and they own like 14 different companies. So they have a sales team of like 8 people that sell for magazines and for video and audio. As you know, we brought the audio part. So it's done well having, I didn't have to do that anymore. So it took a lot of the pressure off, and I could just really enjoy the last 3 years, just doing the fun parts.
Nice. Nice. If you don't mind me asking, and you have the right to not answer any
Yep,
question,
yep.
obviously, but I had a near-death experience this past year, and at the end of it, when I came
That's
out, the
fun, isn't
doctor,
it? By the
oh, it's
way,
wonderful,
yeah,
and
it's a
the
joy.
doctor afterwards said, "Yeah, you had about a 20% chance of surviving." And I'm like, "You told me this now?"
That's about where I was with the sepsis.
Yeah.
I'm there. I was there with you.
Right. And I know how much that impacted me and had an impact on my life. How did that change things for you with your viewpoint, with how you approached, what you were doing, or did it?
It did. Oh, I sold the company because of it.
Okay.
Because I needed to get the pressure off. I
Yeah.
knew that. Look, if I'm going to focus on health a little bit rather than working 100 hours a week, because let's face it, you're an independent out there running a network or whatever, you're working a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't care, these guys that say they do it in 4 hours a week are nuts. They're lying to you,
Yeah, they are.
because they're not taking everything into consideration. And when I mean everything, I mean waking up at 2 in the morning thinking about work because that's your life and that's all you do. They're not counting that time. They're not counting those endless hours you spent just thinking about what you do. So I needed to just get rid of some of that and some of the responsibility, and that's why I sold the network. And I decided that I'm gonna enjoy the things that I like to do. I'll probably never retire because this is fun. But I thought I'm going to give back more. I didn't do a lot of these interviews before on podcasts about podcasting. Dave Jackson was the only one I went on, actually, because he's my mentor. But I started doing more of this and giving back and trying to give back more, what I've learned over the years. And I just said I'm going to help more people, and that's what we've been doing.
That's great.
You?
I
Now I
wondered.
need to know about you.
I wondered. Yeah. It changed everything for me. It changed everything in my entire world. For me, I was done eating the bad food. I started working out again, and I mean, dropped all kinds of weight and business. I was like, I'm done. I'm not working a little over here, and I was already basically full time in podcasting as it was with what I was doing in coaching, and I said, I'm just going there because it's what I love doing. I'm not doing anything else that I don't love. I'm just not. I'm not going to have another boss tell me what I can or can't do or what holiday I have to miss or no. I'm just done because you know what? I just found out I may not have it tomorrow. So I'm like, that's it. End of story. For me, it was very striking the way it hit me.
And it never leaves your mind.
Ever.
I
Nope.
mean, I'm in remission, but it's always there.
Yeah.
Every time I go for a colonoscopy or, colonoscopy, or, anytime you do blood work or any of that, it's always there. Once you hear, I don't know if there's cancer, but once you hear the words you have cancer, it's always there.
Right.
No matter what you have, yours, it's always there.
It is. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it wasn't cancer. It was a pneumonia actually that got so bad that the lung shut down type of thing. But even at the end of it, the doctor's like, this can come back. So you need to be watching this and working on the breathing machine all the time. And so every time I feel a little short of breath or something, I'm like, you know, I'm worried and I'm always thinking, is it coming back? Is it coming back? Am I all right? I don't know what.
I'm just getting over my
Yeah.
third pneumonia last week. I'm only able to talk today. Wouldn't have been able to do this on Friday, so I know exactly what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
You
And they
know,
do say once you have pneumonia, you're more susceptible to it.
right. Yeah.
So,
So I have to
and
worry
welcome
about
to the health
all that.
podcast here on.
Right. So on today on the Podcaster
Yeah.
Nation, we're going to talk about health, life-changing things, and sales. But tune in
Yes,
because
that's right.
I
What
love it.
haven't we covered today?
Oh my goodness. I appreciate you being so open to talk about just everything. And I think that's what people are going to get out of this too, is honestly how happy you are after all these years of podcasting is all the testimonial you need to say this is a great way to go.
It's not easy. There are a lot of hard days, but your episodes should be the thing that gets you through. Whether you're solo or whether your episodes and your listeners are the things that get you through. our fan base is kind of rabid. So, we've done meetups. We did a 6 week road tour where we took our RV and stayed at listener farms in 14 states and had meetups at all of them.
Wow.
So we
Love
met
that.
probably about 1,000 listeners and met their horses and stayed at their farms and ate their food and did all of that. That's what keeps you going as our listeners. Now we have a large group of Patreon supporters. There's about 600 of them, which isn't big compared to some podcasts, but it's a good size. And they're all in this private room, and they are all. I made friends with all of them because we do their birthdays on the morning show. Every day we do birthdays on the morning show of our auditors or our Patreon people, and so I needed to make friends with them. So now I have something I do. Uh, I contact one of our listeners every day by private message. They're all part of our Patreon community, one a day, to ask how they are. Just checking in with you, see how you are. And I do one a day, and it's been the best thing I've ever done. I get so much out of it. I don't know. They
Nice.
get a lot out of it, I'm sure, because this podcaster they listen to every day all of a sudden just contacts them out of the blue and says, "How are you?" Um, and you become part of their lives, and they're the one that keeps you going.
Nice. Nice. I love that. That's amazing. So many people think that their podcast is all about them, and they really have
No,
forgotten that it's all
it's
about their
about the
listeners.
listener. Yeah,
Yeah. It's all
this is
about the
for
listener.
them. It's about them. We get our listeners on the show a lot.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Oh no, our auditor group, our Patreon community, like we have product reviews. Companies send us products to review. That all goes out to our listeners, and then they come on the show and review it. If they get
Hmm.
a new horse, we'll have them on to highlight their new horse and tell us all about their new horse. If they've just won a big event, we'll have them on the show to talk about the big event they won. And in our polls and our surveys, it shows that their favorite guests is always other listeners. It's not the Olympics. It's not the Olympians. It's not the big name riders. It's other listeners because they can relate to them.
The people like them.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All right, let me sneak in my usual corny
Okay.
question here. This is my Arnold Schwarzenegger "I'll be back" moment where I have to get it
Okay.
into every podcast. I'm just neurotic about it. So, in the interest of time, the you've been podcasting a long time, so this should be pretty good. In terms of doing your podcast, what is it that you absolutely love the most about what you're doing, and what is it that you absolutely just dislike the most about what you're doing?
I'm terrible. We'll do dislike first.
Okay.
I'm terrible at paperwork. So contracts, because we have contracts with our hosts. We have 50 hosts, sponsors. Everybody's contracted. I hate doing contracts. Just hate doing. I've always hated it. When I was in sales, I would take days to fill out my applications. My wife would yell at me, "We don't make money unless you send us in," And I just hate it. It's just the worst part for me. I just hate it. I got ADD, and it just I get halfway through and I'm done. So that's been the hardest part. The best part is for me. It's when I turn on the mic, when I go to Zoom, and my co-host Jamie for Horses in the Morning's there in the morning, and we just start. We don't talk to each other. We've done 3,000 plus episodes together. We don't talk to each other in between. We're good friends, but we only time we talk is on the show. So for us, it's our therapy, and that's the highlight for me is the people we meet, meeting listeners, and doing the show, meeting guests, and hanging out with Jamie is the highlight. That's why we do it.
Amazing. Yeah.
It's therapy.
I've heard that before, and I've actually, said that to folks that, hey, for a lot of people, and for me too, on a lot of occasions, doing this is your therapy because it's your way to kind of talk through things, and you hear other people having these issues. It's like group therapy, really, when you're interviewing. So it's like you and I sitting here talking about our medical issues,
Yeah,
going,
exactly.
I know exactly what you're talking about, nodding our
And I
heads,
haven't
right?
had anybody to talk about that with in a year. So there you go. And now
There-
they had to listen. So it's
That's right.
perfect.
They're
It's
stuck.
like,
We had a captive audience. So I love that. Let me kind of start. I know you have a hard stop, so let me kind of round things out because I can sit here and talk to you
this
for
is
another
me
hour.
too. This has been fun. Yeah.
I appreciate it. What's a good piece of advice? Man, you've given a ton already. I'm sure you've got a zillion things you could throw at her, but for a podcaster who's not where you are, which I think is just about everybody in the business, except maybe Joe Rogan, um, not where you are in the business, but just a podcaster who's trying to make it, trying to get bigger, trying to take the next step. What's your best piece of advice you can give them?
Consistency, consistency, consistency. And podcasters, there are a lot of people today that downplay that. They want to do seasons. You're doing seasons because you want to take a break. Unless seasons make sense, like it's because you're doing a murdery podcast and you're talking about a specific murder and it's going to be a season. Okay. And then you're going to take a break. But if you're doing a general podcast and you're calling it seasons, the only reason you're calling it seasons is you want a break. Let's be honest. Listeners forget very quickly. They forget you very quickly. Think about, this is the other thing. This is probably the best piece of advice I could give is you think about how you listen to podcasts. I think about this every day and drive my wife crazy because I bring up observations all the time. I think about how I listen to podcasts. So when I see I've dropped off a podcast and I'm not listening to it anymore, I then go back and look at why, because you do these things subconsciously. So think about your listening habits and why, think about everything in your listening habits and why are you doing it that way? And then learn from it because your listeners are the same. So I have one that I dropped off recently and I went back and looked at why I dropped off of it. It's because they missed a month and it went out of my routine.
Wow, there you go.
It's you listen, I always say you make a contract with your listener. The contract is, and by the way, they're not paying you anything in most cases, right? Unless they're donating
Right.
to you. But the contract is, I'm going to show up and provide you entertainment in whatever form. You're learning something, you're just laughing or whatever that is. It's entertainment. I'm going to provide you entertainment on a certain schedule. And I better be there because I have planned I always make the joke when I do keynotes at Podfest is, Dave Jackson of the School of Podcasting.
Sure. Yeah.
Dave's a legend. And he was my mentor for all these years. And I listen to School of Podcasting when I'm in the shower on Mondays mornings. So first thing I say at a podcasting conference at a keynote is I'll say, I shower with Dave Jackson every Monday morning. And if Dave Jackson's not there, I'm mad because he's my shower buddy on Monday mornings. But that's how people listen to, you have a certain time, and guarantee you that Horses in the Mornings listen to it at a certain time for people. And if I'm not there, if we're late an hour for whatever reason, we hear about it. So you have a contract with them to provide that entertainment. Once you break that contract, that subconsciously they're going, well, I'll find something else to listen to and you're replaced. And then it's hard to go back.
That's great advice. And just putting yourself in the listener's shoes in general is great advice. But in that way, looking at your own behavior, why did I fall off? Why did I stop listening? That's huge, huge.
And we do it without even thinking about it. Start thinking about every way you listen. Why am I listening to this show? Why am I not listening to this show? Why did I just quit that interview? Why did I just turn that off?
Yeah.
All of those things, start thinking analytically about why you did it, and it'll be the same thing for your listeners, and then relate it to your show. The other thing, if I could offer one more,
of course,
things have changed 100 times since I started. Right? I mean, podcasting has changed 100 times. It's gotten a lot easier than it was, and it's gotten a lot harder than it was. It's harder to find an audience now than it was 10 years ago. It's easier to do a show now by 100-fold than it was 10 years ago,
right?
And get it out there. So, some things are easier, some things that are harder. But I've totally lost my train of thought. Can we?
Some things are easier, some things are harder.
Yeah, I totally lost my train of thought. I did totally lose my train of thought.
It was going to be profound. I could just tell.
Yeah, it was.
You were setting it up. I
guarantee it was.
Yep. You absolutely were going to kill it.
Sorry about that.
Hey, we don't edit. This is what I'm talking about. Yeah. That's why I don't edit.
See, guests do this to us all the time, and I'm the same. I do the same thing.
Those moments are priceless. They really are.
If you do edit, this is a good edit point, by the way.
It's all good. No, it's all good. I love that, actually, because, you just showed a whole bunch of people that you don't actually have an S on your chest. You actually are a human being, like for real.
It's true. It's true.
It happens to me all the time when I lose my train of thought, and then I'm just scrambling, going, "All right, now what am I going to turn this into? Because I lost that."
But I legitimately blame age for everything now. So, but I can be legitimately doing that now. So
there you go. All right, hey, I love it, and no problem. But
it's been fun.
I thank you so much because that's the best compliment I could ever get is that someone comes on and says I had fun. We try real hard to do that here. So, Glenn, thank you for everything, for coming on here talking about everything you've done. I mean, your advice is unbelievable for everybody. You've got credibility just pouring out of you, and every number in the world backs you up that you're somebody they should be listening to.
And
And
remember one thing, same thing I started with. They come for the content, but they stay for you.
nice, nice. Love it. Everybody, I hope you're listening to this guy. Go back and rewind it and replay this and listen to everything he's had to say because you're not going to get better advice than this out here in podcast world. I'm telling you right now. So love it very much. I'm honored that you came on my show today. Thanks for deciding to and for choosing to. Means a lot to me as the host of it. So
All
thank you
right.
very
Well,
much
go
for
out
that,
there
Glenn.
and don't be boring. That's the other one.
All right.
Don't be boring.
I'll do everything I can. All right, folks, this has been another absolutely fantastic episode of the Podcaster Nation. This is so full of gold. I'm telling you, we're going to have to give it a praise before the end of the day. It's just insane. Glenn Hebert, founder of the Horse Radio Network, Horses in the Morning, guy's a legend. And to have him on today is amazing. And I hope you guys all learned something. This is the podcast. It's about podcasters. It's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. Folks, this is the place where, especially today, the rising tide absolutely raises all ships. So keep sailing.